Hey everybody, how's it going? Appreciate you being here with us today for this important discussion. Before we get started, I just wanted to explain what I mean by extreme activism. Basically, we're going to be talking about any activism that can be perceived as extreme from other people. So this could really be anything that anybody perceives to be extreme. So it's not just down to one particular type of activism. Some examples could be protests, street demonstrations, vigils, open rescues, pressure campaigns, maybe even controversial posts or rescues of extreme nature. Extreme. So the reason I wanted to talk about this partially is because I want to talk about what's really extreme, and that's what's happening to animals right now every day. We breed about 70 billion land animals into existence each year just to exploit them and kill them. Gas chambers are used, grinders are used, suffocation is used, throat slitting happens, and then sea life as well. They're caught out of their natural habitat sometimes, ripped from the ocean, or they're raised on a fish farm. And if you've never seen what a fish farm is, look it up. It's pretty terrible. But activism is important. We're speaking up against these things, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of activism and let all these kind activists that have joined me here today for the panel speak about that as well. So when I first went vegan, I thought that disruptions, for example, were extreme. I thought they made the movement look bad. I was like, those are just a bunch of crazy vegans yelling in the grocery store. What it's accomplishing, I don't understand. Shouldn't we be trying to please everyone? But I do think it's effective now. And some of the people on the panel today actually encouraged me to be a part of my first ever disruption. And a few of the people here were part of that disruption with me. So glad that we're all here together again. But we'll talk more about a little bit of all of that later. First, I want to bring in my first guest. She's been an activist for 3 years. She's the organizer for Windsor Detroit Animal Save and the Detroit organizer for PETA. Please welcome Maria Leonardi. Maria, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Trey. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Maria, I just want you to let us know, what is a pressure campaign, and have you seen proof that this type of activism works?
Yeah, so actually one thing that not many people realize is that we are all fully capable of running pressure campaigns and organizing pressure campaigns. It is something that I know we're all growing as activists and voices for the animals, and it's something that I'm still learning every single day. So the importance of a pressure campaign and why they are so imperative for the animals is because, it's escalating your tactics from, usually they start with trying to set up a meeting with an executive for a corporation. And usually, unfortunately, that does not pan out very well in many cases. So from there, you go to, holding demos, organizing peaceful demos. And then also from there, you kind of heighten it a little bit more, and you escalate that to things like sending petitions to the corporations, thousands and thousands of petitions to corporations that have been signed by people that are advocating for animals. And then from there, you kind of have to go to the civil disobedience, which that would include the things that, that I've been a part of with PETA against both Texas A&M University as well as Chrysler, kind of targeting Chrysler for their sponsorship of the Iditarod dog sled races. But because of these pressure campaigns, PETA, I of course cannot take credit aside from being a body and a voice with these organizations. But because of their skill set, I've learned so much. And, especially with the Texas A&M University Target campaign to get them to close down their dog laboratory where they've bred dogs into existence with muscular dystrophy for canines. You know, PETA, because of their work, PETA has got them to close down the breeding portion of their program. So now they are still testing on these animals, and, you know, these activists are showing up at meetings, at celebrations. You know, both two activists that are on here today have actually been a part of a couple of pressure campaigns against Texas A&M University, and it's because people break down their own barriers and get involved in that way that we can actually successfully execute these. And then, of course, the Chrysler sponsorship of the Iditarod dog sled race. You know, my personal, I guess, part in that was, you know, we started off doing the second car smash, where we smashed a car that was purchased by the organization that was a Chrysler vehicle, and we, you know, smashed it. I ended up, you know, being detained by police. I ended up having to go to court and everything for that. But then that escalated to, you know, an activist on here being a part of that Target campaign where they entered a football field during a football game for Texas A&M University. And then what really like made headway was when we handcuffed ourselves to their vehicle at the Chicago Auto Show. You know, that did result in some time in jail. But because of this escalation that started out with trying to talk to executives and sending petitions and showing up at random events, Chrysler failed to show up to court for that disruption, and they pulled their sponsorship. It is incredibly important that we partake in these. We break down our own personal barriers that hold us back. You know, I'm guilty of that, and it's something that I'm growing and I'm learning with. So yeah, that's why they're important.
Thank you for all of that. So why do you think with the Chrysler pulling their sponsorship of the Iditarod race, why do you think that was so successful, and why do you think that worked? And also, can you just tell us a little bit about the Iditarod and why it's not a good thing?
Yeah, of course. So why I think it worked is because it did start out with, you know, trying to speak to executives with the organization, did not have luck with that. It escalated to, you know, showing up and disrupting random events. And really what it ends up doing is, I think, kind of humiliating these corporations and these companies. And nobody wants to be humiliated. Nobody wants to be seen as someone that is partaking in animal abuse and sponsoring animal abuse. And with the Iditarod, if you're unfamiliar, is a dog sled race in Alaska where these dogs are forced to run over 1,000 miles. They're kept in, you know, absolutely despicable conditions. They over 150 dogs have died during the Iditarod alone. That doesn't even account for the dogs that have died off season, which is hundreds. And these dogs are kept in, you know, barren kennels. They are on 6-foot leads, so they're basically just able to walk around in circles. They suffer frostbite, pneumonia, heart attacks. They suffocate on their own vomit on these trails. And it's absolutely asinine that corporations like Chrysler and still the sponsoring corporations continue to support this tradition.
Yeah, and to me, everything that you explained about the Iditarod, I mean, that seems extreme to me, abusing dogs or any type of animal, and making them go through such lengths for what? You know what I mean? Like, is it worth it to that animal for their lives or to be exploited? To me, trying to do something and going to lengthy measures to try to make sure the animals are not harmed, that doesn't seem extreme to me. So that's part of the reason I put the word extreme in the panel today, just to because we hear that a lot, you know, veganism is extreme, animal rights activism is extreme, but of course what happens to these animals, that is really what we should be trying to stop. So, well, thank you for all that, Maria. We will hear from Maria more a little bit later, but right now I want to introduce my next guest. She is a Christian and a mom who's been vegan for 5 years, and she's been an animal rights activist for 3. She's the co-founder of Animal Liberation Action Squad and the founder of the hashtag Done With Dairy campaign. She's a mentor with Animal Activism Mentorship. Please welcome Annette Felix Davila. How's it going, Annette?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
My question for you is, you've been a part of disruptions. You were a part of one that we're going to be talking about a little more later, a dairy disruption. You've been a part of vigils. You've been a part of street demonstrations. Actions that some might deem extreme, but I just want you to talk about whether or not the type of activism you do is effective or not.
Okay, thank you. When people think of the different types of activism that we do, they do deem them extreme. They're very important because they bring the issue to light. Like, people want to live in this little bubble and they don't want to know the truth. So vigils are very important because when we're there, it's not easy to be there and to see the animals in this condition and, being taken into the slaughterhouse to be murdered for people to eat their flesh. But we have to be there for the animals and we have to be there to expose the truth. So what we do is, at these vigils, it's important to get footage and share the footage with people. People, like I said, they tend to live in a bubble. They don't want to know where what they're eating comes from. They don't want to know that an animal had to suffer, and they don't want to see the condition that these animals are kept in. So when we go to these vigils and we take photos and we take video footage and we go live, and our friends and family and people that we know personally see us there in person, speaking up for these animals, taking this footage, it gets them thinking, and it's very powerful imagery for a lot of people. And a lot of people do tend to, go vegan, and it does work. And I've seen people see these footage and say, I don't want to contribute to this abuse anymore. I don't want to be part of that anymore, because they're face to face with it. And when they're face to face with it, they tend to say, okay, this is real and I don't want to support it. It's, like I said, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's very important for the animals to do the vigils. Disruptions, I know it's a very controversial one, because it's disrupting restaurants or supermarkets, and there's a whole study on it, and they talk about how when we eat, it's breaking bread. It's very important social tradition. So when people are at restaurants and they're having dinner with their family, and activists come in and they disrupt their dinner, people get offended and they see it as extreme, negative. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're bringing to light that we are not accepting business as usual. This is not correct. This is violence. This is not normal. And we need to bring this to everyone's attention. And all the big social movements practice types of disruptions and different types of activism to bring it to light. And when they did that, they got so much attention. And then other protesters and other people joined in. We have the civil rights movement. We have the young men that sat at the counter at the Woolworths, and they sat there and they did the sit-in, and they were the first ones to ever do one, and they moved, and everyone found that extreme. Everyone was like, what are these young men doing here? But what they ended up doing was bringing so much attention, and then it spread across the country like wildfire. Young people all over started doing these sit-ins, and it ended up that Woolworth ended up changing their policy down the line. And then we have Rosa Parks, who didn't want to give up her seat. And it started a big boycott movement for, people refusing to give up their seats on the bus. So, and when you think about these, initially when people saw this, whoa, that's too extreme. What are they doing? But they are disrupting what people see as normal. And when we go into supermarkets and restaurants, we're disrupting what people see as normal. This is not normal. We are not going to accept this. And Naomi Wolf, she's a feminist author, and she was a former political advisor. And I watched a little video of her, and she was talking about mass protests and how when you do a mass protest and you get a permit to do a mass protest, you cannot block traffic. You cannot disrupt traffic. You cannot disrupt business as usual. So if you're walking down the street, is it going to be as effective if you disrupt? When you disrupt business as usual and you bring it to the attention, then it becomes very effective. And like I said, if people find it controversial, it's disrupting people's dinner, but it's violence. They're consuming violence on their plate, and we cannot accept that as business as usual. It's not. It's violence, and we have to speak up against it, and we have to be diligent, and we have to be powerful, and we have to speak up for the animals in whatever we can. So, we have to nonviolent approach against these industries. So they're very important for the movement, and they're very important to bring it to attention and to inspire other people to join and to think about what they're doing.
I agree 100% because, you go by the meat counter in the grocery store and it's normalized violence. Those are body parts. I mean, sometimes there are fish in there and you can still see their eyeballs and like nobody bats an eye, and disruptions just remind people, hey, somebody's life was taken for this product that's in the grocery store. And going back to what you were talking about with vigils, and for those that don't know, vigils are or the way that we're referring to vigils in this discussion for the most part are when there are animals, a lot of times outside of slaughterhouses that are coming in on the trucks, or vigils can be held even in grocery stores where there are already dead animals there as well. But a lot of times the vigils outside of slaughterhouses, they either stop the trucks or film the trucks as they go by, maybe even give the animals some water because it's legal to not give them water or food for up to 72 hours. So that's what we're talking about with a vigil. And that's what really got me. Like, I never thought that I could do a vigil. Now I've done several, but I never thought that I could do one. But I saw how it made me feel when I saw somebody go live. If you see some slaughterhouse footage, it's terrible, but there's something psychological. You can almost say like, oh, that's like not real or something. But if somebody's live, somebody that you personally know, a family member, a friend, and they go live and this is happening in front of their face right now, that just makes it so much more real. And that's part of why I think that vigils are so powerful. And I want to touch on one other thing before we let you go, Annette, that you were talking about the Greensboro 4, the demonstration at Woolworth. And it was Wayne Shung's video, The Science of Social Change, that had a big part in changing my mind about disruptions, because he talked about the Greensboro 4. And he said that, the young men that sat in, people that were the same color as them were coming up to them and saying, you're making our race look bad. And that just blew me away, because now that's one of the most famous sit-ins in history. And it made a huge difference. And we look back on that moment as a turning point throughout history. So how anybody can say that, direct action or protests or, things of that nature aren't effective, I don't know, because when we look back throughout history, those are some of the things that have rewritten our history. But anyway, thank you for all that insight, Annette. We're going to hear a little bit more from Annette later. We're going to move on to our next guest. He is an organizer with Anonymous for the Voiceless and Animal Save Movement in Atlanta. He has also traveled with various animal rights groups throughout the country, and it spreads the vegan message. It's also his birthday today, so give a special birthday welcome for Luis Correal. Thanks for being here on your birthday, Luis.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Wouldn't rather be doing anything else on my birthday. Hello, everyone.
So my question for you is, so you ran out onto a football field during the Texas Bowl when Texas A&M football was playing Oklahoma State. I think it was November of last year, with a sign that said Texas A&M stop cruel dog tests. And another demonstration I saw you do online, you were pretending to be what some would call a piece of meat, animal flesh, out on the street. I just thought that was a powerful demonstration. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your personal experiences with those demonstrations and how effective they are?
Absolutely, yeah, I'll be glad to. So the first one, I guess we could just speak chronologically about the events. I guess the first one was both of them were PETA demos, by the way. So the first one was the Thanksgiving demo, and that we were in a couple of different cities. Little Rock, Arkansas was our first stop, and basically there were two big turkeys, like fake turkeys, next to me, and I was the other fake turkey. So I was basically naked in the street. So that's very eye-catching. Like, what is this random dude like being naked on the street? And what is PETA up to now? And that's the great thing about PETA, is that it's always doing things that are gonna grab people's attention, taking people out of the norm, and I just love those so much, because people are gonna stop and watch, and it's gonna make them think, because they're like, what the heck is going on, you know? So we were there, and we had a lot of really great interactions with people about Thanksgiving, and how turkeys are actually really smart and social, and how they want to live just like we want to live. So that was the point of the demo, is to basically equate a lot of the things that we have similar with animals, because people like to say how different we are from animals. I mean, maybe so, but we also are very similar to animals in the ways that really count, in the ways that matter. Like, we both want to live, we both want to be with our families, we both want to be with our friends, enjoy the sun, eat. And that was kind of like the connection. It's like we are pretty much the same in that way. So we were encouraging people not to pay other people to kill turkeys on Thanksgiving, and it was fantastic. We did it in Little Rock, Arkansas first, and then we went to Nashville, Tennessee, and that was great. It was really effective. We actually ended up being on the news when we were in Tennessee. Arkansas was a little bit more quiet, but it was still great. You know, even if you change one person's perspective on human supremacy and speciesism, and how we see animals so different than how we see ourselves. I mean, you know, take me, one change for me, and now I am so passionate about helping other people make the connection to the same thing that I did. So you never know what impact you're having with these demonstrations. You don't know who you can impact, who can then become the next, like, Gary Yurovsky or something like that, you know? So they are very powerful, and never underestimate the effect that any of your demonstrations, any of your activism can have, because sometimes when we get discouraged, when we only see only one person stopped and checked out our footage or our demo or anything, but we are there because we know it's the right thing to do, and because we want to give the animals who don't have the ability to speak our language and tell other people that they don't want to be killed, even though it's pretty obvious by their screams, but no one hears their screams in the slaughterhouse. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent a little bit. So that was the turkey demo that we did. So that one, I think it was really great. It was powerful. I loved that. Was my first kind of like PETA demo that was sort of very different, very interactive, like a food demo, they called them. And then the next one after that was a little bit more intense, I think. It was for the Texas A&M, like Trey was saying. It was when I jumped into the football fields, and I held a sign that you can see there. And it says Texas A&M stop cruel dog testing. Because basically now, for over 40 years, starting in the 80s, Texas A&M has had a dog testing facility in their university where they have been breeding. The breeding has stopped now. I believe last year they stopped breeding because the main dude at the lab retired, and it also helped that PETA was doing so much campaigning against them. So no more breeding, but ever since PETA began their investigations, and this, mind you, this is only since 2016, there have been over 100 puppies that have been born to these facilities, and people were being lied to about the puppies being born, which is insane. Like, if you don't find anything wrong with your research and what you're doing to animals, why are you lying to the public? Why are you lying to students about innocent puppies being born and being given this really debilitating disease? And not only is this a horrible disease for these dogs, but the conditions that they're kept in, the floors are slatted. Um, it's cold in there. They don't have blankets. They don't have any entertainment. They don't really get to go outside. They're fed this kind of gruel because their tongue and basically all of their muscles are wasting away, and that's what they're testing. It's muscular dystrophy. So they can hardly like walk around. They can hardly eat their food. It's really easy for them to choke on food. It's terrible. I don't see how anyone can find that acceptable. And when I jumped into the fields, and I was there for maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes, and people, when they finally got me, the security people were upset, and I just kept pointing out my shirt, like, hey, I'm here for the dogs. Like, I know this might be a little bit inconvenient for you. I'm stopping your game for a couple of minutes, but I want you all to think about what these poor innocent animals are going through in these labs. So I just kept pointing out my shirt, and I was smiling at them. A lot of people were not very happy that I was there. They were booing and stuff, and I thought it was just crazy. I'm like, I'm here to create awareness, positive change. I was there with a couple other activists. I'm sure a lot of you know Danny Alexander. She was there too, and we got arrested. So we got arrested for this action. The first action with the turkey, that one was completely legal, and we were on the street, and it was great. But this one is where you kind of have to put yourself on the line a little bit and decide that you might get arrested for trespassing, because if you're jumping in a football field, you're gonna get charged with trespassing. So we were taken to jail for this action, and I don't regret it, and I knew that was the outcome that was gonna happen. But me being in jail for like one day is nothing compared to what these poor innocent animals go through in those labs. And mind you, allegedly I committed a crime, right? I trespassed. So I'm being punished by the law. But these animals are innocent, and they have done nothing wrong. They were just born a dog, and they decided that it was okay to test on them. And what I find crazy about the animal testing is that they say, oh, why don't we test on humans? They're like, because they're very different than we are. But why do we test on animals? Because they're very similar than we are. So it's kind of like a contradiction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what happens to those dogs in the dog labs? I mean, it's disgusting. And I understand that, a lot of people haven't ever met a pig. A lot of people haven't ever met a cow. But almost everybody's met a dog. And, like, if somebody was testing on my dog, if somebody came and took my dogs out of my home and started doing cruel tests on them and took them away from me, yeah, I mean, I would be doing something too, whether I was vegan or not, or an activist or not. I would be out in the street. I would be making videos. I would be doing something, because that is extreme violence and cruel and torturous. So with that being said, thanks for bringing awareness to that. I wanted to ask you one more question. So there were 68,415 people at that football game.
Wow.
How in the world did you muster up the courage to jump over that wall and run out onto the field?
So actually, I was very nervous right before the jump, because we weren't expecting that much security to be in the field, but there was security everywhere, even right where you kind of go and to just peek out. So even the person that organized the demo, she told me after I jumped and everything, she was like, I probably wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't jumped, because, there's so much security. But I just thought, I came all the way from Atlanta to Texas to do this demo, and I was just thinking about the dogs, and I just kind of just decided, hey, let me just calmly go out there, not think about it too much, jump over the fence, and then went into the field. After that, it was easy. So I just thought about the animals.
Well, it was great the way you organized it. I think I watched it, and I think there were maybe 2 or 3 people with signs, and somebody got taken down pretty quickly, but it distracted the security, and that made room for you to be able to run around midfield. And you lasted for a while out there before they got you, man.
Yeah. I think they were just hoping I would just run across and leave, but I was gonna be there until they took me away. So as much time as I could, and at one point I stopped because you running, people may see your sign, but if you stop, it's easier for people to read, and I had extra time, so I said, why not?
That's awesome, man. Maybe you could put somewhere in the comments where people can find that video. I appreciate you being here. We'll hear from Luis a little bit more later. I already read her bio, but for those just joining, I'm going to read her bio again. Back when we thought Luis wasn't going to be back for a second. But my next guest, let me find my notes here. My next guest was raised vegetarian, has been vegan for 8 years, and an activist for 5. She's a teacher, mentor, and a dog mom, and a cat mom. Joining us from Florida is Arwen Carlin. Arwen, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy that we have this media to get all of this out to everyone in the pandemic.
Yeah, this has been crucial. I mean, Facebook Live and Instagram Live and stuff like that during the pandemic has been huge. We've seen an explosion from TikTok, people doing activism over there, all because we're in the pandemic. Just because a lot of us are confined to our homes doesn't mean we're gonna shut up about animal liberation. A lot of animals are still suffering. So yeah, we're going to keep speaking up and having meaningful conversations like this. So thanks for being here, Arwen. My question for you is that I've heard some people say that extreme activism makes the movement look bad. Even I thought that at one time. And Arwen's actually one of the people that convinced me to do my first disruption, along with Shannon and Matt. Anyway, is extreme activism effective? Can you just tell us a little bit about your personal experiences and what your philosophy on it is?
Sure. So first of all, I wanted to say, why do we feel that extreme activism is counterproductive? So some people might think that, it makes them uncomfortable when they see it. And that's actually what I thought too when I first saw a disruption happening. I was like, wow, that's kind of over the top. I'm not sure if I would ever do that. And then I got to know the people that were doing the disruptions, and I got to know a little more about the philosophy behind it. And I sort of grew more comfortable with it. And then, I tried one, and I felt, adrenaline, and just, it felt so good to be speaking out the truth so strongly. And, it's what we all want to say, but in our day-to-day lives, we have restrictions where we can't say those things. So disruptions are sort of when we get to say what we actually want to say. And so the other things about it might be that we feel like we want to fit in, and we want to be nice, and we don't want to upset anyone. And that's something that has been told to us for our entire lives, since we were born. Be nice, don't, make people uncomfortable, or avoid trying to do that. But in this situation where animals are suffering, I feel like people, they need to be made to feel uncomfortable about what they're partaking in. They're paying for animals to be killed, so they need to realize that is what they're doing. and doing extreme activism and doing disruption, speaking the truth so strongly is really going to challenge their beliefs. And then there's also sometimes, I feel like people might not want to do extreme activism because they think that people will ridicule them. And ridicule that could come from, the people that we're addressing, our opponents in this, or they can also come from fellow vegans and activists even, saying that what we're doing is counterproductive, that we should always be nice and, share vegan cupcakes or recipes, and that's all great. And I'm not saying don't share recipes or don't make vegan cupcakes. I love vegan cupcakes. But I do think that we should try to support other people when they do activism as well. And then, so I wanted to read a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And this is from his letter from a Birmingham jail. And the quote is, "Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored." So it's nonviolent direct action is, pushing society to recognize that there is an issue. So right now, we're sort of on the line, and people are just kind of still turning away, and they don't want to look at what's happening to animals. And when we do these sort of extreme actions, we're sort of forcing them to look at it. And so we're reaching people who wouldn't even talk to us if we tried to talk to them, outreach to them on the street. And I feel like, that's really important. So I wanted to talk about some examples of the effectiveness of, extreme activism. So Annette was talking about the Greensboro 4, which was something I was going to talk about, but I also have another example, and that is Emmeline Pankhurst. And she was part of the suffragette movement. And what she did was the society was just ignoring women activists who were trying to get the right to vote. And the activists were just fed up and tired of it. And so they got a group of them together, and they stormed into Parliament, which was a room full of men. And Emmeline Pankhurst stood up on a chair, and they all pulled signs out from under their dresses, and they started yelling and demanding the right to vote. And she actually, I'm definitely not saying for anyone to do this, but she spit at a police officer, and she was actually arrested for that. And that's what she had planned to do. So she was trying to get arrested. The police officer, after she had spit at him, they took them outside and told them to go home, and she spit at him again, and she struck him, and so he basically had to arrest her. And so they were jailed for, I think, a week. And when they got out of jail, everyone was talking about women's rights. So you can see how effective that action was. And the instance with the Greensboro 4, the thing about these actions is they get attention, and that's what we really need. And sometimes, these actions, they go viral on social media, and we can reach, thousands and thousands of people with only 5 or 10 minutes that we took to do this protest, not including the time it took to plan it, of course. But and then it's even better if we get media coverage for it, and that could go out to hundreds of thousands of people or millions. So it's just, one-on-one outreach and activism is really great. I do it all the time. And so extreme activism is just sort of like trying to create a conversation, a larger conversation in all of society, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It gets the conversation going. And if we're ever going to change anything, if we're ever going to change people's minds, then we definitely have to start a conversation. So yeah, everything you said was awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of activism is powerful. It doesn't have to be what somebody might deem extreme to be awesome activism. Even like everyday conversations and cooking and stuff like that is activism. But yeah, I feel like some of these big actions that are maybe controversial for whatever reason, yeah, that's what really sometimes even gets like a national or worldwide conversation going. So appreciate you giving that perspective, and we will hear more from Arwen here in a little bit. So we're getting a lot of comments. I haven't been able to read many of them yet. Just a reminder that we are going to take questions from everybody. So if you have a question, just try to save it. We've got one more person on our panel that I want to introduce, and then we'll try to take some questions after that. If you've already asked a question, after Shannon is done, please ask it again so that we can see it. So I just gave away who our next guest is. She's been doing activism for over 23 years. She organizes independent actions and joins in on the efforts of others everywhere she and her son, Vegan Evan, go. She is a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator. She serves on the board of a sanctuary, and she's a mentor with Animal Activism Mentorship. Please welcome Shannon Blair to the stream. How's it going, Shannon?
Very well. I'm good, thanks. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm all right. Thanks for being here. So Shannon's also one of the people who inspired me to do my first disruption. We were all it was after a march, and her and Arwen and Matt inspired me to do that. So I'm so glad that y'all could be here. So Shannon, with that being said, sometimes experience, I think, is the best teacher with some of these disruptions, and it's how you learn about what's effective sometimes, as well as what Arwen was talking about. We learn throughout history too, but we also learn from experience. So have you had positive experiences with activism that some might deem extreme?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been actually our most positive experiences. And those actions are the ones that I believe had the most impact. And so it's interesting that you bring up about your first disruption, because my first disruption ever was with Arwen, and I was very scared. I had Evan with me, and he was adamant about wanting to do it. And there really weren't any other kids, maybe one or two at most. And we had done a march to the White House, and that was awesome. And I had pretty much thought the same thing that you had said earlier, that the disruptions maybe could be counterproductive. And then after talking to some people, I really was like, maybe this is effective. And so then I wanted to do it. And then when this happened and we were all getting ready to go in, I was just so nervous. And I looked over at the most friendly, nice looking person in the crowd with us, and that happened to be Arwen. And I said, do you think it's okay for me to bring my son? And she just had the nicest smile, and she said, absolutely. And so we went in, and it was scary at first, but as we've done more and more and we've tweaked our ways of doing them, we think that the effects have been so positive and actually really surprising a lot of the time. And it's really the amount of positive conversations that we've had with people, sometimes during, but usually after these disruptions, has really taken me, back a little and caught me off guard, because I know that people are often going to be upset while we're inside during a disruption. With the grocery store, they get mildly upset. Restaurants, they tend to be a little bit more upset, and it's because they're, a lot of time feeling like it's all about them and it's their special night, or sometimes it's a special occasion that they're there for, and then it's even more, makes them more angry. But we have to speak up in these situations, because it is violence, and that's what the point of the disruptions is, to disrupt this normalized violence that everyone is kind of blind to, walking around and acting like it's not existing or not a problem. And so when we go in, we now start off almost 99% of the time by saying that we come with a message of peace and compassion and nonviolence towards all. And everything we say after that are true statements. And so we don't, we do our best to not throw attacks at people. We do have to be honest. The consumerism is part of what's driving this. Obviously, there's subsidies and other issues too. But if tomorrow everyone were to stop buying cow's breast milk and cheeses and ice creams made of it, the subsidies wouldn't continue. So it is, we are the problem, and we do have to address that, and we have to really help people. And I wear this hat because I didn't understand the dairy industry until somebody very bluntly told me that I was being a hypocrite by being vegetarian, and that I was supporting rape and kidnapping, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And so sometimes, it's not, people might look at it like you're being mean to them, or you're being hurtful, or you're attacking them. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate people, and we're trying to help them to make better choices. We want to give people information that they deserve to have, so that they're able to make these better choices. It's not fair that we've all been born into a world of normalized violence. It's not our fault, but once we're educated, we have a responsibility to let other people know what's going on. Our fellow human beings deserve to have the knowledge, and they deserve to have all the information so that they can stand up against all of these injustices. I can't tell you how many people I went to school with and grew up with. They have children around the same age as Evan, a little bit older, a little bit younger. And I try to tell them, just the health aspects alone, and the state of the planet right now. This is like a very serious matter in so many different ways. Of course, we're vegan for the animals, and that should be more than enough. But we have every reason to make better choices that are surrounding these matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important when talking about animal rights to keep it centered around the animals. But at the same time, if the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is a group of nutrition experts, over 100,000 of them, if they can put out a peer-reviewed statement that says vegan diets are okay, then what excuse do we have? I can kind of understand if we needed animal products to be healthy, or if we needed them to survive, but if we don't, then, which we don't, it's been proven now, then why in the world are we putting animals through all of this actual hell on earth? That's a really good point. And, I think that just goes back to the whole point of this. That's what's extreme, grinding up baby chicks alive in the egg industry, separating mothers from their sons and daughters in the dairy industry. All these things are just awful. But thank you for that. And I don't know if everybody saw. I'll try to put it back up. But this was the demonstration that we were talking about. If you can see over to the right, that's Shannon, and that's when the cops got to the store. But yeah, a few of us that are here on the panel were there that day. That was my first disruption, so I just had to throw that picture in there because you said that Arwen kind of helped you along with your first disruption as well, and I think that's a good point too. We should definitely let everybody know of the risks if it's a certain type of activism that there might be legal trouble involved or something like that. But if we should encourage each other on it and educate each other about it and tell each other how effective it can be.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll hear more from Shannon later too. Right now, if you have a question for anybody on the panel, please drop it in the comments. If you have a question for someone specific, you can let us know that as well, and I will do my best to get some of your questions answered. I'm going to see what we've got right now. Let's see. So I'm going to throw this up real quick. Kim says a lot of historical peaceful activism was seen as extreme in their time, and yeah, that's a great point. And I think some of us touched on that. It seems extreme because it's disrupting the normal, but when you look back at history, I mean, these nonviolent protests, those are some of the ones that have been the most effective throughout history. See if we have a lot of our activists on the panel are getting some shout outs here, and Jessie was a part of that disruption that we showed the picture of earlier, and she said Pensacola Veg Fest 19 activism weekend was the best. It also encouraged her to do her first disruption. So I didn't know that was your first one too, Jessie. That was both of our first ones, and Luis, who's on the panel, he was there as well. I don't know if that was his first one or not, but yeah, it was definitely an experience. So I don't see any questions yet in the comments. If you already asked a question and it was earlier, then please ask again so that I can find it. And Jessie about that disruption said, if I remember correctly, the cops said they do have a point or something to that effect. And yeah, I remember somebody saying that they heard the cops. Arwen's going to come in and talk about that action a little bit.
So yeah, the cops were super nice. They basically didn't say anything to us. They came in, and I think one of the activists overheard them talking to the manager and saying, well, what do you want us to do? They're leaving anyway. And I think, yeah, they said like, well, they do have a point, and it was interesting because after that, the DXC Pensacola received a message from that police officer. I believe it was him. And this was after another action that we did where we took screens to one of the local restaurants here, and we held them outside one of the windows in the restaurant, and everybody just flipped out. The cops were called, and they had to protect us and everything from these people that were just going nuts. But anyway, so that cop messaged DXC Pensacola asking for vegan recipes.
What?
Yeah. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So you really never know, who to reach with these actions. I mean, people are already thinking that they need to eat less meat because, their doctor told them that they have to lower their cholesterol. Well, when they see you in that grocery store, they're going to think about other reasons why they should stop, like, oh, animals are suffering, which is what we want them to realize. So, yeah, it was. And also another thing I should mention is that, the police, we shouldn't really trust them too much. So he was contacting me asking for vegan recipes. He might not have really been interested in vegan recipes. He might have wanted to try to incriminate it.
He was.
So we never know, but it was just really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing some insight on that. I had no idea about that. That's really funny. So Shannon Schifferly has a question. My daughter is 12 and wants to be involved in more activist activities. Are extreme protests okay for her? I'm going to bring in Shannon Blair and Annette in here for that question because they both have kids that are activists. So Annette, if you want to go first, and Shannon.
Sure. My son is 7, and he has attended vigils, protests, marches, disruptions, and I always make sure that wherever we're going to go, I feel that he's going to be safe, obviously. But most of the activism that he's involved in, a lot of it is on public property, and there's no chance of getting arrested or anything like that. I wouldn't risk getting arrested with my son present. So that's would be definitely a concern for any parent. So just as long as you're in a place where it's considered public property and you feel comfortable and you feel safe, then yes, I would 100% say yes. And disruptions, it's in and out. Usually you get asked to leave, then you cooperate and you walk out, and usually the cops will just tell you not to come back for the most part. Let's see what Shannon says, but that's kind of how I feel about it. So
yeah, so and Vegan Evan, my little guy, is 9, and Annette's son and my son are best friends, and so I think it's really awesome that they get to do so many of these more extreme actions together. They love to do them, and it's really funny actually for me. I don't often watch the videos later on, but when I do, their faces are always so cute, and they're like totally unfazed by like people yelling at us. They're not fazed by the police officers when they get there, and it's really interesting. But I will say, like at the slaughterhouses, from what I've seen personally, the kids are much more resilient than even the adults. And they also don't harbor the guilt that we do. So I don't think it's quite, I mean, obviously it's very sad for them to see it, but this is what's happening. So Evan always says that, he wants to go because he wants to know what he's fighting for. Who he's fighting for is what he actually says. But I think it's important for them to see they're going to be, I've been vegetarian since 1996. I don't even like that word anymore. I like to say I haven't eaten an animal since 1996. I've been vegan now since 2015. We get mocked every day. We get made fun of. So we don't care because we know we've seen it for ourselves. And I think that it's important for the kids to see the injustice, know that it's real, because they're going to be told that it's not, and they can stand up for themselves. And I also think that, they have a right to stand up for these innocent animals. When we know all this terrible stuff and it weighs down on us, to not do anything about it, that's when you're really going to hurt. But when you're able to actually take a stand and do something that's so powerful, and it doesn't make things all the way better, but it alleviates some of that. So I think, yes, definitely get involved in all types of activism that's nonviolent. Make sure you have friends with you. Try to get other kids to be there so they're more comfortable. But absolutely, the kids should be involved.
Definitely.
Awesome. So I've got a question from someone for Maria. Let's see. So Meat Free Mikey, one of my favorite activists, says, question, if cops show up, what is the best way to engage with them?
Yeah, so when cops show up to any sort of demonstration, you always want to have, if you're an organizer, you always want to have one person that is a police liaison. That one person is in total control of speaking to the police about what they're there to speak with you on. And always have somebody also filming your engagement with the police, because keep in mind that police officers are always recording you, and you always want to have that. Police will try to be your friend in any circumstance. They will try to get information out of you that with security culture, like, you should not divulge. You should keep a lot of information to yourself. I've had the run-ins with the police quite a few times now. When I was detained once, and then and then arrested another time. And other times when the police have shown up, it has just been a conversation. You know, one time the police showed up to a banner drop that I did in Indianapolis, cut my banner off the freeway. So yeah, really, for the most part, listen to what they say, abide by the law, unless you are willing to, unless you are, you know, doing that, the sort of direct action where you are going to take a certain risk and possibly end up, you know, with charges.
Anyway, I think it's great to have a police liaison that you trust, somebody who's brushed up on the law. Everybody should keep in mind that laws are different everywhere, state by state if you're in the U.S., probably province by province if you're in Canada, and the same goes for, you know, countries around the world. Definitely brush up on all of that. Get to know the U.S. Constitution really well if you live in the U.S., and there's a lot of YouTube channels and stuff like that online that are focused around that type of thing too. I'm going to bring in Shannon because I think she got upset that I didn't come to her right away for this question. So Shannon, I'm gonna let you talk about that as well.
No, if anything, I thought it was funny. Some people, well, yeah, like every single interaction with the police is different, and I really probably talk to police a little bit too much, but I almost always am able to outreach them by the end of it. And I'm very careful about what I do say, but I don't recommend, I recommend what Maria said, don't talk. But yeah, like one interesting thing that I've found everywhere that we've traveled though, is often the police don't know the laws themselves. And it's not like their fault necessarily. It's like a lot of stuff to remember, and we're just human beings. And, you know, they see other officers say things and then they see people comply immediately. And sometimes they just grow to believe that they know things that aren't true, or sometimes they're not telling the truth and they just want you to do things. So what I mean by this is I can't tell you how many times we've been on public property. We know we're on public property. We're doing things that are legal, and we're being told that we're not. We're being told we're on private property, that we're not allowed to use maybe an amplifier in certain areas where we've already checked the laws and we know we are, things like that. And the police aren't very used to being challenged. So sometimes I get a little bit too hyped, so I don't recommend, you know, doing that, but it's definitely good to stand your ground on certain things if you know that you're doing the right thing. And the best way that I've found to do that is I initially, when they say like, you're not allowed to be standing here, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure we are, this is public property, right? And if there's any type of confusion and they continue to press, I ask for a supervisor. And that usually eliminates the problem. We've almost always stayed in the same spot while we wait for the supervisor to get there. And 9 times out of 10, maybe even almost 10 out of 10, we're allowed to be doing exactly what we're doing. So just always know beforehand, do some research, and then like, don't get yourself in trouble if that's not what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to practice civil disobedience, then by all means do it. But don't like just get yourself in trouble because you press it too much. If like I've had situations, well, Trey, you edited the awesome video for the Learn the Law, ma'am, at the Walmart. But if it's getting too close, I always kind of take one step back. So if I'm saying I'm going to walk away because you don't have the right to detain me, I haven't done anything, and then I start to walk, and then she's like, oh, you are going to get arrested, actually. So I take a step back and, you know, argue a little more. But yeah, every single police interaction is absolutely different. Even if you're like in Orlando and then you're in Orlando and then you're in Orlando, it's going to be different every time. So just don't base your next interaction on your previous ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Luis made a point too and said asking for a supervisor can be a good idea. Good reminder. Appreciate all that insight from Maria and Shannon. I'm going to bring in Luis real quick, and I'm going to ask him a question. So Luis, like we said before, he's an organizer with Anonymous for the Voiceless. And if you're not familiar with Anonymous for the Voiceless, they're a street activism crew. And what they do is they stand out in the streets and they do a demonstration where they have screens hanging from their bodies pretty much. And these screens are showing how animals are exploited throughout different industries, such as the egg industry, the dairy industry, the meat industry, fishing industry, fur, circuses, zoos, rodeos, that type of thing. So, and then you're a save organizer as well, and that's what we were talking about with the vigils, where a lot of times they're standing outside of slaughterhouses saying goodbye to the animals as they go in, filming, raising awareness about the suffering that these animals are going through. So, Luis, these tactics might seem bizarre to some, and maybe even to the people who don't think it's bizarre. They may think it's just like really hard to do. But can you just talk about, were you afraid to do this type of activism when you first started? And if so, what kind of got you over the hump to just, get there and do it? And also, has it been effective?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think animal rights activism, or any kind of activism in general, can seem scary to a lot of people, because what it means really is you're going against the grain when you're doing activism of any kind. In this situation, animal rights activism is what we're talking about. We're going against everybody. I mean, what's the percentage of vegan in the world? Like 1 to 3%. So you're basically standing against what most people are in agreement with and what's culturally acceptable for them. So of course it's gonna seem scary, because you think that you're gonna be laughed at, you're gonna be mocked, you're gonna be insulted. I mean, I don't know. Some people may think that you might get assaulted, and it's possible as well. It's happened. It's not outside of the realm of possibilities. So I think that's a lot of the reasons why a lot of people get nervous. I am naturally an introvert, right? So I am usually just keep to myself alone, and I'm kind of like not someone who's in large groups all the time. So for me, like when the introverts come out and do stuff, like it's serious, right? So I just decided that I needed to get out of my comfort zone and stand up for animals, because I was seeing YouTube videos of animal rights activists, Earthling Ed, I believe, Earthling Ed or Joey Carbstrong. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them. I saw him doing Cubes of Truths. And I actually wasn't vegan at the time. I was kind of like on the fence of veganism, but I saw that video and I was like, wow, they are speaking against the most horrific cruelty that's happening to animals all around the world. I want to do that. And then I found at the time, the organizer for AV Atlanta. I went to one of their demos, and that was my first demo. And I was actually really nervous to talk to someone, but I just really wanted to. When there's like this passion inside of you, like something you really want to do, you will find a way to overcome your insecurities and all those obstacles that are gonna get in your way, to fight for what you know is right. So, and once you actually do it, you realize it's not that scary. Like it's just talking to another human being, asking them a few questions. Like you're not, it's not anything that's, in reality, it's not that scary. In reality, you're just asking people questions and asking them how they feel, and asking them if it's okay what the animals are going through, and just challenge them their own paradigm. And it's been really effective. People have gone vegan on the spot, and even if they don't, they go home thinking about it.
Absolutely. Stand by just for a second, Luis. I'm about to give one of these questions to you again. But first off, I want to take a question from Katie. Can you tell viewers a little bit about Animal Activism Mentorship and how people can be a part of this organization? So I have seen a couple of comments that are questions that maybe don't necessarily relate directly to extreme animal rights activism. So another forum might be the best for those. But if you're having an issue as an activist, or if you want to step up your game as an activist, or if you haven't become an activist yet and you want to be a voice for the animals, Animal Activism Mentorship is a program where you can get one-on-one mentorship. There's also group participation in certain things. They're optional. They're great for community building, just meeting other activists and all that. Katie is actually one of the mentors for that program, and everybody on our panel today is also a part of that program. So if you maybe want to, kick your activism up a notch or learn about activism, just go to animalactivismmentorship.com. Shannon has conveniently dropped that link into the comments for us. So yeah, check that out. And speaking of our mentors, one of our mentors has a question, and I'm going to give this to you as well, Luis. Meat Free Mikey, he says, can someone explain what civil disobedience is? Actually, that's not the one that I was going to ask you. This is the one I was going to ask you from Mikey. We'll get to the other one in a minute, but is it advisable to counter-argue what's truly extreme when confronted? So Luis, this might be a good question for like a Cube of Truth, for example. If somebody comes up and they're like, man, you guys out here wearing masks and showing slaughterhouse footage in the streets, we're just families are trying to enjoy themselves out here, and I'm looking at slaughter footage. This is kind of extreme. What do you think you'd say to those people?
I think the answer is within Mikey's question, really, like what's really extreme, and you can just kind of turn it around into them, because the way that Cube's work is best, and just conversations in general for people to reach their own conclusion, is for them to hear themselves say their own answers. People reaching their own conclusion is the most effective way for change and for like psychological like change and understanding. So when you ask somebody questions like, well, what do you think is more extreme, for us to be showing what's truly happening behind closed doors in all these industries, or what's actually happening? Animals getting their throats slit, getting their members like limbs chopped off. What's really extreme? Us asking people some questions and showing some footage, or what the farmers and what these employees are doing to the animals, and then it gets people thinking. So is it advisable to counter argue what's truly extreme? Absolutely. It's very advisable to kind of get into people's minds and like challenge their paradigms that they've been conditioned to think about all their lives, because nine out of 10 times the people that you talk to haven't even thought about those issues as deeply as they probably are the days that they stumble upon a Cube of Truth and talk to activists.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Luis. So and thanks, Mikey, for the question. Katie had another comment. Let me see if I can find it. So she said, we need to remember that it takes 100 clicks for people to become vegan. Each little seed you plant helps people to learn. So what she means by that is, I'm not sure who came up with this idea, but there's something called the 100-point system when it comes to outreaching people about animal rights and about animal liberation and what the animals are going through. So basically it means, somebody might see your activism and, they may not go vegan straight away, but it plants a seed in their mind. And then that might give them, let's say, 10 points. And then maybe they like try a vegan burger and they're like, actually, this is pretty good. Maybe I could do this. And maybe that gives them 10 points. And they just have all these little seeds planted, and eventually maybe they come to a Cube of Truth, for example, and they see the actual slaughter footage, and somebody confronts them about what they're participating in. And maybe they've got 95 points when they come to the Cube. They've already been thinking about going vegan, maybe for health or for some other reason, or going plant-based for health. We know vegan is about animal rights, but seeing that footage and having a conversation with somebody, it just sends them over, and they hit that 100 points, and then all of a sudden they're vegan, and some people even become animal rights activists instantly because of that. So there is another there's another question that Mikey had that I want to bring Maria in for. Can someone explain what civil disobedience is?
During nonviolent direct action, it's literally just, I think it's like pushing the envelope with, risk. And yeah, it just kind of like inching your way into, that territory, that fine line that might, result in some sort of citation, possible detaining you and stuff like that.
Yeah, Arwen, I'm gonna have you come in and talk about this as well.
I think your goal in civil disobedience is to get arrested. So when we think about it, so if we saw a dog that was being beaten on the street, what would we do? We would try to stop that. We might go up to the person that was doing the beating and tell them, stop beating that dog. And that's sort of, what we're doing with disruptions, I think. And then what else can we do? So with civil disobedience, I think what we're doing is we're actually putting ourselves in between the man or the person that's doing the beating and the dog, and sort of, stopping that violence with our own bodies. And so that's what we're doing when we're risking our freedom and our safety for the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. So civil disobedience, not all nonviolent action is civil disobedience, but civil disobedience is a nonviolent action, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So I'm going to see if we have any other questions. Luis on our panel from down in the queue says nonviolent direct action has been one of the tools that's taken different civil rights movements to new heights. The AR movement included. I agree. It really forces the issue, especially, when people get arrested, the courts have to decide, is it ethical for us to put someone in jail for saving an animal or for, standing up for animals? It really forces the issue, and especially, and some of us talked about this already, especially if the media starts covering it, somebody's going to jail for saving a sick turkey that was dying out of a factory farm. Like, aren't we supposed to save animals? Like, isn't that the ethical thing to do? It makes a lot of sense. So we have a question from Christine. How do I deal with my Christian cattle ranch family? I'm an animal activist. Well, I've got somebody who can answer that for you. So I'm gonna bring it. I think somebody volunteered for this one. I'm trying to look through the chat and see. I think it was Shannon. Was it you, Shannon, that wanted to take this one? Okay, she can. Okay, awesome.
So I would say, well, first of all, if they're Christian, there's a lot of great resources that might really help them to get a little more on board. And there's also some great examples of amazing people who have transitioned themselves. And so there's Randy Gentry, I believe is her name, Cows Come Home Sanctuary, or Till the Cows Come Home. And then there's Renee and Tommy Sonnen, who have Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. And there's now also the Barrett family. They might not have transitioned to a sanctuary per se, but they're definitely caring for the animals and doing something else to make money with their land and all. And so there's lots of examples of happy situations like that. And then with the Christianity, there's some great documentaries. There's a Prayer for Compassion that's available on Amazon Prime right now. If you're a Prime member, you can watch it for free. If not, it's like $3.99 to rent on Vimeo. There are some amazing resources at allcreatures.org. I believe it's all-creatures.org. And it basically shows an example of every single verse in the Bible that humans might use to say that we're supposed to harm and consume animals. And it's just really helpful. And so in general, family and close friends can be some of the toughest people to reach. So don't get discouraged and don't take all the energy out of yourself being sad with them. Try to have compassion for them too. as what I tell people to do with anybody in the industry, like, again, we've all been born into this world of normalized violence. And sometimes the people who are participating in it by being the ones in our society that are actually raising the animals, and when they've been born into it, so a lot of the time they're that much more desensitized and even brainwashed in certain ways. And they also have been fed the same misinformation and lies that everybody else has in addition to that. So a lot of the time they genuinely believe that they're helping to feed the world and things like that. So if you can bust some of those myths for them and be gentle with them to a certain extent, and don't hate them for sure, but that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'll talk a little bit about the Christian part of that. There's a great resource on YouTube called The Theology of Christian Veganism. And it's just this dude with a Bible, and he's just straight going through scripture, talking about, just that, the theology of Christian veganism and how that aligns. Shannon mentioned all creatures. There's a reverend named Frank L. Hoffman, and he's a great resource as well, like looking through some of his sermons. He posts sermons weekly on Sundays. I read those on Sundays, and it's very helpful for me. If someone wouldn't mind dropping the theology of Christian veganism in the comments, that would be super helpful. Christine, if you want to check that out. So speaking of some of these Christian questions, that brings me to a question that I want to ask Annette. So Annette and I are both Christians, and sometimes, Annette, I get flack from other Christians for being an animal activist, taking part in activism that some would maybe deem extreme. How do you handle that? And, what would you say that Jesus was an activist?
Yeah, I do get some slack too from fellow Christians about it, because as a Christian, we know that Jesus called us to preach the gospel and to share the gospel and things of that sort. So when they see that I do a lot of animal rights activism and they see that I speak up for animals, they always want to question me and say, are you doing, what you're supposed to be doing? Don't forget that you're supposed to be sharing the gospel with people. But they forget to realize that, the animals are God's creation, and we are called to be good stewards. We're called to be, to be good stewards of what He has given us. And as Christians, we believe that God gave us dominion over the planet, and He gave us dominion over the animals. But it's the same way as God has dominion over us. So what I always try to remind them is that God has dominion over us, and He wouldn't do what we do to the animals. And as Christians, we're supposed to be Christ-like. So every day that we live our lives, Jesus preached love and compassion to all. He never said, only love a human, only love this type of person. He said to love all. So we need to share His love with every human and every animal that God created. God loves His animals. He loves His creation. When you look in Genesis, God created the animals, and He looked at the animals and He said that He was pleased with His creation. He said He blessed them, and He told them to be fruitful and to multiply the same way He blessed us and told us to be fruitful and multiply. So I always try to tell people that, and remember, as Christians, that they shouldn't judge. So they shouldn't be judging me because they don't know what I do besides animal activists. Just because we speak up for animals doesn't mean that we don't do other things as well. So, and that's something that people have to remember.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said on that topic in general. If anybody's interested in that, actually the last panel discussion that I did was about that. If you search Trey Morrow Vegan Christian Panel, you should be able to find it on YouTube. We did a whole panel about that about a month ago. And Christine says they don't care about changing. My dad's died of cancer 7 years ago, but my sister will inherit the farm. True, I love them, but it's hard. My dad was saved by one of the cows when he fell off the barn. They rescued him when he was in a coma. That's Yeah, that's crazy. And you know, a lot of farmers, you know, they you can't love an animal and send an animal to slaughter, but I think that they do in a way care for their animals, and it's hard for them when they ship them off. I've actually had a conversation with a dairy farmer out on the street, and he said they name their cows and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, maybe you did, but what about, you know, when a boy was born into the dairy industry? And he goes, or when you took your cows to slaughter after they didn't give milk anymore. And he said, well, those were the roughest days. But the thing is we don't have to have those days. We can live a vegan lifestyle. We can create other businesses. Somebody that was just, I think it was Shannon mentioned, you know, there's like the Ranchers Advocacy Program and stuff like that. But Shannon also mentioned something too, Christine, that, you know, and I know it's probably extra difficult for you because your family has a cattle ranch, but, you know, at some point, sometimes we have to deem somebody unreachable. I'm not saying you should give up on your family, but there is so much time that we could spend changing the minds of open-hearted and open-minded people that, you know, we shouldn't, you know, bang our heads up against a brick wall. That can be especially hard to drop when it comes to your family. And I'm not saying to drop it completely. You know, definitely mention it to them and stuff like that. But comes a point where it's taking your energy and it's taking your mindset, and it might even hold you back from doing activism that might actually reach someone. So I would say to keep a healthy balance of that in mind. That's just my personal advice for that because it's something that I've dealt with as well. I don't, let's see. Okay, I think we're about to wrap it up here. So I'm just going to go through everyone, and if all of our panelists could just give a short statement on, you know, what you hope people take away from this panel, just something short, and then we will wrap it up. Annette, I'm going to come to you first. Just what you want people to take away from this discussion.
Hi again. Really, what I would like for people to take from this discussion is not to be afraid to take action for the animals. You know, be brave and go ahead and speak up for them. All activism is done to help animals, and we're here to achieve one goal, which is total animal liberation. And without us speaking up, we're not going to get there. So I encourage everyone to try some new activism and get out there, and don't be afraid.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Annette. Appreciate you being here. It's Annette's birthday weekend as well. I think tomorrow's your birthday, right?
Yeah, tomorrow's my birthday.
So everybody be sure to wish Annette a happy birthday tomorrow. We appreciate you spending your time with us, speaking up for animals, and having this important discussion. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to give Arwen some time to give her final thoughts.
So yeah, this was a great panel. I'm so happy that I was asked to do it, and that everyone showed up to watch and interact with us. So yeah, I think you know, everyone is contributing to the animal liberation movement with all different types of activism. And if you don't feel comfortable doing a certain type of activism, you know, it's not like, don't force yourself to do it if you really feel that it's not for you. But just try to support others who are taking extreme action. And that just means the world to us when we have everyone's support. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for spending your time with us tonight, Arwen. We really appreciate it. Next up for final thoughts is Luis. And Luis, I've been seeing it in the comments. Before you give your final thoughts, you got to let us know what that thing is behind you. What is that, man?
So we recently did a demo, actually. My most recent demo with PETA was the dancing tofu, and it has to do with COVID and how tofu has never caused a pandemic. And we were standing in front of Publix, and then we had a local activist. Her name is Daniela. She was dancing with the tofu costume, and we were basically kind of letting people know that tofu never caused a pandemic, so why don't we just choose tofu instead of animals' dead flesh, which has been the cost of all of our pandemics. Animal exploitation has been the cause of all the pandemics. So yeah, those are there's more details, but basically just bringing awareness. And since Georgia is opening up, we decided to take the opportunity, and of course we were still being careful and keeping social distance and all that good stuff, but that's what it's about. So I haven't had to ship it out yet. I think I'm gonna have to on Monday or something, but hopefully we can do another demo soon.
Cool. What are your? I think everybody was wondering what that was, so I had to clear it up. But what are your final thoughts before we let you go?
Okay, yeah. So my final thoughts and what I would want everyone to think, because I know that activism can seem really intimidating, but what's helped me to just keep pushing myself is to really put myself in the animal's position, and just how imperative this message is for us. It's an uphill battle, and we need to do the most that we can, as much as we can, as many of us as we can. The more vegan activists that there are, the quicker that we're going to have a vegan world, and just push stronger for people to accept just really basic animal rights. With that being said, again, just wherever you are in your activism path, just push yourself a little bit more. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to go and get arrested tomorrow, but try to put yourself in a little bit outside of your comfort zone. That's all. That's what I started doing, and little by little you start doing different things, and you find just know that the animal rights community is a really supportive family. It's you see each other in different states and different actions, different marches, and it's just really beautiful to be part of the community, and just know that everyone's really supportive, and we're gonna have each other's backs, and we're all in this together for the animals.
Yeah, that's a great point. And everybody on this panel I consider a close friend, and I met everybody on this panel through animal rights activism. It's a special bond you have with somebody when you're fighting for the same thing, using your spare time, or doing it full time, or whatever you're doing, or however much time you're giving. It's a powerful thing to connect with like-minded people, and people who are fighting this fight alongside you. And I'm proud to do that with you, brother. I appreciate you being here on your birthday. Meat Free Mikey asked us to sing you happy birthday. I'm going to spare myself that embarrassment, and perhaps you as well. But we do wish you a happy birthday, man. And hope it's great.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Thank you, Mikey, and thank you guys, and really appreciate being here. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, man. Take care. So next we're going to go to Maria for final thoughts. Maria.
Hi, Trey. Yeah, first of all, I'm honored to be a part of this panel and stand alongside all of you and everyone that's watching and spending their time with us right now. You guys are so important to, the animals, and I want you to know that everything that you do does not go unrecognized, and it is so very much appreciated. No matter what form of activism you're doing. But one thing that's helped me, and everybody's kind of touched base on it, is I deal with social anxiety. I deal with, I'm just a nervousness. And every time I step out of that comfort zone, it's not very easy for me. But it's a barrier that I break down every time. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Don't push yourself, give it time. And someone stated, dip your toe in a little bit, and, kind of break down that wall a little bit more, and you'd be surprised what you're capable of. And it's this, it's anxiety that I personally struggle with. But then it's adrenaline, because at the end of the day, the people that you're kind of targeting in your form of activism, they are not the victims. The victims are the animals that you are advocating for. And I always kind of try to keep that mindset that at the end of the day, I'm fighting for the animals. they're who I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about in this moment about people's feelings or their dinner that I'm disrupting. At the end of the day, the animals need us to break through those barriers. And I know that if I can do it, anybody can. And that's all I really wanted to say. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. I think that's a great point. Like, if we were in the animal's position, how would we want to be advocated for? Let's step out of our comfort zones. You know, I don't think anybody here is advocating that everybody has to like go to jail. I've never been to jail for activism or anything like that. Not everybody has to do all these types of things, but let's support each other. Let's do the activism that we're able to do. Let's step outside of our comfort zones, even if it's just a little bit. And because, you know, obviously many of the animals, they don't have any comfort at all. I appreciate you being here, Maria. Maria was part of a duck rescue that happened literally right before she did this panel. So thanks so much for being so dedicated and making sure everything was good there, and then rushing home to be a part of this and spend your time with us too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Trey.
Last up for final thoughts is Shannon Blair. Shannon, what are your final thoughts?
Oh gosh, no, I always have so many, but I'll try to keep it short. I just want to say, because this was about extreme activism, I hope everybody knows by now that, you know, we want you to understand that we don't think that any of this is extreme, considering what all these animals are going through. Extreme is in 2020, walking into a grocery store or a restaurant and having the option to purchase decomposing body parts, stolen breast milk, and stolen ovulations from innocent animals that did nothing to be used or abused or mutilated or chopped up into pieces. These individuals have families, friends, and feelings just like us. They want and deserve a right to their lives. And so thank you again for having me. I just want everybody to know that, you know, there's room for everybody. We can all do something, and it doesn't matter if you have limitations with, you know, your work schedule and things like that. There's ways to work around it, and it's so simple to get active, and we'd be happy to help you. And again, if you're interested, join the Animal Activism Mentorship Program, and we really just want to help to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Shannon. For those of you who don't already follow our panelists on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and elsewhere, please find them. If you are a panelist, if you don't mind, just drop in your social media handles in the comments. That would be helpful for people to find you. So look out for that. I definitely recommend following all these people. I had them on the panel because they're all activists that I look up to and aspire to be like in many ways. So I appreciate them all being here. If you enjoyed this discussion, I think I'm going to start doing these every month. We did one about Christianity and veganism last month, and we're doing this one about extreme activism today. So yeah, like Shannon said, I mean, I put extreme in quotation marks in the title of the discussion because obviously activism is not extreme at all in comparison to what's happening to animals. If you're not vegan yet, I would highly encourage you to go to watchdominion.com and watch that, and you'll see what extreme things actually happen to animals. And if you can get through that documentary and say that you think that's okay for taste pleasure, I don't know what to tell you after that. But if you do watch it with an open mind and an open heart and have some compassion, or even just a desire to seek justice for animals, or just not be complicit in the violence, go to challenge22.com. They offer, and some of our people here on the panel, I think, are even Challenge 22 mentors. They give you mentorship. They give you registered dietitians who can help you go vegan. So if you're not vegan yet, I would highly recommend doing that. If you're vegan but you're not an activist, like Shannon said, you can go to animalactivismmentorship.com. If someone could drop that in the comments for me, that would be helpful. Animalactivismmentorship.com. They will give you an activist, an experienced activist that can help you one-on-one with your comfort level of activism. So if you want to check that out, please do. Thank you so much again to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you being here. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you next time.